Clément Fisher from French Atomic Institute, and the goal of my presentation is to show you how it's important to have a good data management in scientific research, and more I make a focus on the HDF5 format. So why in research it's important to have a good data management? Often it's not a real questions when we start our experiments, our simulation, but from the increase of processing capabilities linked to the Moore's law, there is a lot data which is created every year. Here is some example of the amount of data which is created by large scientific tools. For example, the Large Hadron Collider from CERN create 25 petabytes of data per year, and petabytes, it's not an amount really known by people, but it represents 25 personal computers, 25,000 personal computers, because it's 1,000 terabytes. The Sloan Digital Sky Survey creates 200 gigabytes per night. So all this data need to be stored in the good procedure. And even if our experiment is smaller, it's important to think about the storage, and I show you why and the key points to do that. So why it's important? It's important because the research is created by the consortium of researchers. So even if you create your data, maybe one people in the future use it. And as I said, it's possible to use it in the future. So in few years, when your PhD is ended, maybe your director use your data, and if there is no information of your data, it's impossible. And if you share your data in open research, for example, the people from the other side of the world need to have clear information of your database to use it. So a good database contains all the information to use it. So for all the information is the parameters to create them, the creation method, for example, if you use filtering or if you use a specific acquisition system or other things. All the information which is important to use your data need to be stored in the database. And there is several possibilities to do that. But one of the good possibilities is the HDF5 format I will introduce later. So these questions of good data management it's an old questions. In 2016, there is a consortium of scientists and organizations which defined a set of best practice to data management, to scientific data management. It's the FAIR principle, and often in the public project, as a European project, you need to sign a data management plan linked to the FAIR principle. FAIR, it's for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. So these 4 keywords can be described all the data management plan. So findable, it's for the data need to be found for both humans and computer. From since years now, the artificial intelligence and other things like that need to access a lot of data. And if your data is not understandable by a computer, your data are not findable. But if your data store only arg0, arg1, arg2, they are not understandable understandable by a human. So you need to use comprehensible keywords. For example, if you store a nils amount, the keyword is nils, and everyone knows that it's a nils amount. Your data need to be accessible, so you need to store your data with standard procedures to access them in the future. And it's not safe to store your data on the USB key, which can be lost. So your data needs to be stored in the long-term storage. For open science, you need to store your data in open source storage, but it's not needed for fair principle. It's better, but it's not needed. You can keep your data private if it's necessary. Your data need to be interoperable, so everyone in the world can open your data without dependencies to your system acquisition system or your application. I can open data from Linux or Windows computer without problems, and you need to do that. And even if in the future your data your acquisition system isn't usable, you need to keep format you can open. So often you use open format because it's more long-term procedure than private format. And finally, your data needs to be reusable. So as I said before, your data needs to be well documented because when you are far of your lab, someone needs to access your data and need to know the context of the creation and what is the content, the real content of the data. So when you create data, which is experimental, when you create experimental or simulation data, you need to think about the fact that the data need to be usable even if you are not present to use them. And if you do that, your data is really useful for scientific research. So to present more precisely the importance of have a good data management plan, I chose to start with one use case from my side, and after that I will present you the key points from Python readers, but you can use it from other languages. So as Odile said, I am research engineer in structural health monitoring and artificial intelligence. So the structural health monitoring is the process of acquiring and analyzing data from onboard sensors. So we can create a lot of data in a plane, for example, or in oil and gas structure or other things. We have a lot of data created every minute, and we need to analyze them. So in our lab, we use the guided wave to do that. So it's ultrasonic waves which propagate along structures, and we analyze them often with physical methods, but sometimes with artificial intelligence method. And in this context, I perform a lot of analysis from machine learning and deep learning methods. So one of the latest use case we have, it's a guided wave database. We perform an acquisition of 48 sensors, as you can see on the right picture, sorry, with 48 sensors, and the goal of this experiment is to analyze the robustness of one of the imaging methods, the guided wave tomography, with temperature variations. So we perform acquisition with several temperatures and several defects. So the complete acquisition is 4 states of the plate. The first one is the pristine state. There is no defect on the plate. And after that, we create 3 sides of defects on the. We didn't see my phone. We create 3 successive corrosion on the same place. and we perform acquisition on this plate. So we realized four complete acquisitions, and one acquisition is performed for 8 frequencies and 8 temperatures from minus 20 degrees to 50 degrees. And as we have 48 sensors, we perform an acquisition with each sensor as emitter, all other sensors as receivers. So we have a matrix of size 48, 48, and 2000 points. So there is a lot of data to store. We can resume that at 4 times 8 times 8 times 48 times 48 times 2000 points data to store. So in Python to store that, we can create a big matrix. Often is the case when we start to use the NumPy and Python. We have a lot of data to store. We create a matrix, a big matrix with all the data. In this case, we obtain a 6-dimensional matrix. But if we think about how we use our data after, we can perform a better storage, and we can say that we didn't use the data from different states of the structure, so pristine or 1, 2, or 3 collisions, and we can split the data in smaller matrix of size, frequency, temperature, emitter, receiver times, and create 4 NumPy files or a dictionary file. It's the same thing. Just in this case, there is 1 file, and in this case, there is 4 files to store the data. And we can say that, yes, we have the matrix of temperature frequency, but I didn't use several frequency and several temperature at the same time. So you can create smaller matrix of type emitter, receiver time, and create 256 files, which is the smallest file we can create. So all these storage methods are the same, but sometimes it's simpler to read a smaller file, and I show you on the last slide. There is no difference on these 4 methods to the size on the disk. This database takes about 9 gigabytes. So the choice of the storage is only led by the time taken to read the data. Sometimes there is an important thing about the time to write your data, but in this case, it's not really important. But if you need to perform real-time acquisitions, you need to take care about the right time. But in this case, I'm only interested on the read-time data, and if I show you the time to read 1 vector on this data, you can see that, for the NumPy file, not the dictionary file, it's similar to the NumPy file, but for the NumPy file, the divide and conquer method has a bigger impact on the read time data. So if I read a big file, the first one, you took about 5 seconds to read 1 vector. If you split your data in 256 files, you took less than 1 second to read data. So the strategy to divide your files can be important, but there is some limitation about that. First one, if you have too small portion of data, if you need to load 2 files, for example, your time increase. And I know that use 265 files. It's not really useful. It's not really relevant. And if your database need to have a larger number of subfiles, it's impossible. So this question is really often occurred in computing, and to solve these problems, there is a lot of formats which we created, known as container formats. Container formats are really common format files, and you know some of them because the PDF or WAV files are container formats. So the goal of this file is to store several files as one file. And if we take the example of AVI files, which are a video file, you have the video and the audio as two files, but when you open the file, there is one file known by the reader. It's the same thing for the PDF structures, which with many containers in the file. So as these formats are really known in computing, in 1987, the National Center for Supercomputing Application creates one hierarchical format, the one container format for scientific community, is the HDF format, which is a good format because it's independent of the platform. You can read formats from C, C++, Java, Python, and many other languages. The format is open, so even if the HDF Foundation didn't provide the library for all the languages, the official library is C++, Java, and I think it's all. You can find a library for all the languages used in laboratory. So it's important for the fair respect. As I said before, you need to have data readable from all your evaluating systems. So in this case, it's possible to read the data from a Linux machine or Windows or other chips. And the HDF format, HDF5 currently, is a format separate in two objects. There is a group which contain other groups or datasets, and your dataset is your data is matrix or tensor. In this case, you can consider that each dataset is the file, it's a separate file. On the previous example of the guided waves database, the dataset are the 256 files. So if I present you an example of how I can store the previous database, you have here the first size of the matrix with the state of the plate. After, you have the temperature, and after that, you have the datasets for all frequencies. And all of these data are stored in only one file. And the other important thing of this format is all the level, all the objects can have metadata. So you can store the names, the PRF, or the creation data, who create the database, for example, all the important information. And you can store for all the levels. So if for example, if I store them, I create a file, I created metadata here with my name. And if I said it's 40 kilohertz as frequency, I can store the metadata here. So all the information linked to the data are stored in the same file. There is no README needed to understand the data. If I go to the read times, as I test before with the NumPy file, you can see that the HDF5 format extracts the value really fastly compared to all other methods. You can read the data in 0.02 seconds for extract one vector, which is really faster than the 256 files. And in this case, there is also a gain in disk space. So we won on the two sides, the read times and the size. And this is really important in scientific research, because if we create a lot of data, we hope we can read it really fastly and not take too much disk space. So HDF5 format has really good things for the research. And this presentation is based on.
Clément, we have questions about your previous slide.
Yes.
Actually, I'd like to say that your sound is not very great. It's it lacks high frequencies, I would say.
For the sound, I don't.
So Damien is asking. No, c'est Gitanoa. So can you ask question? Yes.
Yes. The compression gain is due to the storing method of NumPy compared to the HDF5. Here, there is no compression method applied to the HDF5 format, but by default, the HDF5 is more compressed than NumPy5. I think I didn't go deeper in NumPy5, but I think there is a storing method in 64 floats. Then in HDF5, you only store the real data. So if it's 32 hints, it's stored in 32 hints. I think it's that, because there is a 2 times compression here. And yes.
So you wanted to ask a question, Maximilian?
Okay. So the factor 2 is due to the fact that 64 is stored in 32. Is it correct?
Yeah. NumPy store. I think NumPy store by default, even if the database is in 32 files, I think NumPy store in 64, because here there is a real 2 times gain. And for the second question, H5 and HDF5 is the same thing. The point H5 is often used because it's shorter, but it's the same thing.
And Clément, there is another question. I don't know, is the H5 same as HDF5?
Yes, H5 and HDF5 is the same thing. H5 is shorter to use, so often we use H5, but it's the same thing, and you can change the name. In some application, I use the custom names, but I store the data in HDF5. It's the point H5 it's not needed to be understood, to be stored. So it's just a convention. And to go deeper in optimization in space, you can have optimization, but I choose to start with other optimization. By default, the file is stored in 1D contiguous storage. So all the data stored are one vector, linearized as a row major order. So you can see here, if I have this matrix to store, the row order is I store the first row, the second row, and all the rows one after one. And you store the data as one vector in your disk. But in HDF5, you can have a better storage called chunks, and you split your data in a separate block in memory. It's important because the computer reads the data as one block. So if you have the default order, you read all the data. If you store your data in chunks, you can read chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3. And one of the better optimization possible is you can reorder your chunks as you want. So if you need to read the 4 value here in red, you can store your data in column chunks, in a column order. And in this case, if I store chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3, I can see that all my data are in the same chunk. So I need to read only 6 values to extract my data. So if you know your data usage, if you can predict your data usage, you can store your data to be really optimized for the read method. And if I didn't perform the benchmark for this presentation, but if I need to read larger chunks and I have 1 chunk or 4 chunks to read, I have a real gain to store my data in column ledger. And I present you here the concept in two dimensions, but it's also possible to duplicate with a higher dimension. For example, if you need to read only a slice of your tensor, you can store the data on this slide. And the other possible optimization is for disk space, you can perform compression on your data. The compression is really transparent for the users because it didn't change anything on the commands, but as there is algorithm to be applied for read and write time, you could have an increase in time. So be careful, because if your goal is to have a faster possible method, but you didn't have any interest on the size on the disk, you didn't use compression method. But if you have problems on the size, you can apply the JZip or LZF method, for example. And in the case of a really large database, if your database contains, as presented before, 25 petabytes of data, you can link automatically multiple files together. So one file is small, but have a group from other files. So all this optimization can be applied to reduce the time or reduce the size. And you need to perform compromise, and all the consideration need to be performed with a good knowledge of what contain your data and what the usage of your data. For example, on the previous example, if I store my data in a column ledger, but I always read my data in per row, it's not a real optimization, but it's I lose time to read the data. So know your data before really store them. The HDF5 format have other advantages. One of them is there is a free software for quick review. And you can see here one example of files, the previous one, with 4 key corrosion 2, corrosion 3, and Christine. And here we have all the tree structure of the file. So we can quickly see the keys of the file. On the right panel, there is all the metadata. For example, for corrosion 1, I have 6 metadata corresponding to the voltage, the sampling frequency. I store here all the data, all the metadata I think it's important to the user. And even if it's not really readable, you can quickly read the data in the dataset. But you have floating points, so it's not really useful, but you can do it. And this is provided by the HDF group, so it's maintained by the foundation who creates the HDF5 format. And the HDF group provide also official libraries for reading, donc C++, Java, Fortran. And there is a lot of libraries for other languages like Python. In Python, personally, I use the HashPy package. some people use PyTables, which is a higher level library, but I decided to present you HDF5, and if normally you can see my Python screen, I think. No, you see my Python screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a little bit small, but
No, je peux pas. I can't zoom my view.
Il y a eu un...
So to read a file in HDF5, it's really easy. You can open the file as for classical Python with open methods. The only thing is you replace the open by HDF5.file. So it's the same thing. You can open the file, execute some algorithm on that, and close the file. By convention, I prefer to use the restatement to automatically close the file when it's ending, but you can use the two methods to read the file. You can list the key contained on the file as I present in the HDF view. You can easily list the keys as for dictionary in Python. So you open the file, you call the method .keys, and you have the list of all the keys contained at this level. So for example, if I call the file .keys, I obtain coercion1, coercion2, Christine. If I call the keys methods for the coercion1 group, I obtain the temperature keys. And if I perform the method for coercion1 10 degrees, I obtain the frequency. So you can easily list all the keys, and you can also present that in the graphical view. Here is a quick method I write in the weekends, but there is some method to plot the keys, but you can see here, all the file tree. So if I go up, I have the coercion1 with one temperature and all the frequency with matrix 48, 48, 2000. So it's really fast to go in the file and to browse the file and list all the keys. To read the data, it's as for NumPy or dictionary. So you can call the data by name. So for example, I called here the data from coercion1. And after that is when you are on the dataset level, it's as for NumPy matrix. So here I read all the matrix, but if I choose to read only the first emitters, I can read the 0 line. And if I choose to read 1 point over 2 for the vector, I can't do that. So if I perform this line of code, you can see here, the first line read a matrix 48, 48, 2000. The second one is 1 emitter for all receivers. And the third one is 1 emitter, 1 receiver, only on time. And on time, 1 point over 2. And for the attributes, it's a dictionary of keys. So you have here the list of attributes of the file, and you can call it by dictionary within. So it's really easy to read data in the file. Really common Python methods. And for write data, it's the same thing. It's not complicated. You can create group data set. So here you can create a group, you can create a data set, you can add value to the dictionary, and you can do some optimization method on the creation. For example, I said before, sometimes it's important to store the data in chunks. You can just give to the methods chunk parameters. And in this case, all the data here are stored as chunk of 150. So in this case, I think that my data is really often used as a vector of the third dimension. So I don't care about the two first dimension, and just I store 50 data per chunk. And if I choose to gain storage disk usage, I can perform compression. There is 3 compression by default in the H5 format: the JZIP, JZIP, LZF, and I forgot the third one, but often I use JZIP. It's really common size. And you can add some data to the file. Here I write a file. So as in Python, if I call the file with W, I create a new file, even if it already exists on the disk. But I can modify the file with append modes and add data sets on the existing file. And in this case, I choose to create. So here I have the first file create with group 1, containing a first data set with 3 keys, a second data set, first data set with some random value, the second data set, a subgroup, group 2, sorry, which contain 2 data sets. And in this case, you can see the data set 3 are chunked storage layout, and the data set 4 as JZIP storage. So all these methods show the more important optimization method. And if I close the file to update them, I can add an external link. As I said before, you can use several files in the same. Here I choose to add a link on the group 1 with a link to another file. If I show the size, the disk usage not really grows with this link. So I didn't add all the data, but if I open the file in the Explorer, sorry, you can see here I have a new group with the data, and the link copy all the data contained in the link all the data contained in the file. So in this case, I have a link with all the attributes, the temperature, the frequency, and the data. So you can easily create files, link files between them. For example, if in the case of my database with 4 states, I can choose to create one big file of containing all the states, but each state could be stored in the separate file on the disk. This is useful if I think that maybe I can share the first one, but not I can share the pristine state with other people, but I choose to don't share the defect state. I can split the file, but in my computer, I can have a bigger file to open, which store all the information. And this is really cool for the scientific research, because sometimes I choose to work on private data, for example, with Safran or other industrial partners. And if I write an article on that, I can share a small part of the data, but not the private data. And in my computer, I have a code with only one file to be called. So the link method is really interesting. And I don't know if there is any question, but you can see it. I list all the principal methods to be used in the HDF5 format. So with only 50 lines of code, you can read a file, browse a file, write data in file, and also optimize your data. So if you have the habit to use Python, you are not lost with HDF5 format. And if you choose to store your data in NumPy, as is often performed in Python, you lose a lot of time to create your data, to read your data, because the NumPy format reads all the data on the disk. And after that, your data is not really usable for all the consumption. So I think Odile asked me to present HDF5 format to perform that. I think it's important for you to use open format as HDF5. It's not the only one. There is also other language formats with other interesting points, but HDF5 is really common format. And I chose to create you a quick TP for you, because I think it's more interesting for you to use HDF5 than read slides for 1 hour